Welcome back. So I just had a meeting with the person who wrote this originally, and we were going through various topics and ideas, and the question came up of this long sort of thing that's here. And he said, how can I sort of create a type def to or a type so I can type what this function signature should look like? So that because we put this, if I search for this, almost, um, we type this several times. We do it here. I think it's in server is where we do the register handler. So if you look at register handler, we have this long thing, and even from like a refactoring point of view, if we want the handler to take a different argument or return a different type, that's going to be one of those breaking changes that propagates through the whole code system and just becomes a nightmare to maintain. I'm like, great, because I did touch on that. Like when I started to write this, I started to do this. I started to go type um, uh, handler fn is going to be an fn of this, and you hit save, and the compiler's like, dude, you need a dyn for this. I don't know why the compiler's like a surfer that says dude. So, but if you put like dyn here, oops, this is now happy with this, and I could change this to handler fn, but I can't do this because it's an impl, or even if it were generic, it's syntactic sugar for a generic, and this wouldn't work. So how do we do this? And so I started to explain it, and I'm like, you need to have the handler be its own trait. And because fn itself is a trait, so like it's not, fn is like the most generic trait. It's almost like an untyped trait. It's saying it's a trait with one function, and actually there is a function. I think it's called call. Yeah, it's called call. But it's very non-descriptive. Let me go into the implementation of this and explain this. So we're going to create this pub trait called handler. I'm going to call it handler trait. A bad name, but deal with it. And so now our handler trait is defines the function signature for what it is that we need to handle. So now with that, I can replace this with just handler trait. We still have to do these trait bounds. We can't get out of doing that because of how we're passing this across threads. But now we've taken out this signature from what we are storing as handlers. And I know where you're thinking, but it's going to be better. So we've broken everything else. So let me just go through, and so every place that we used to call just a function, we have to call handle, because that's now what the singular method is of the handler trait. It's a little bit more descriptive. So this is going to break. And so now we have to change this, like I said, to a handler. Oops, sorry. Handler trait. And now we can box that just fine. It's an impl of a handler trait, right? Oh, because we didn't just import it. There we go. And now we're fine. So now this is going to be an impl of, my VI key bindings are getting weird, handler trait. Now that's happy. Got a few more errors. So here, before we were just getting handler, and we said, okay, it's just a function. We're going to call it. We just now have to change that to be handle. Good. Got 3 more to go. This is where we're running into problems. I believe right now I can build. So my external interface has been fixed, but one of the things that we did when we switched from using FN to using the capital FN is it allowed us to be able to use closures to define our handlers, which is the typical way of doing this. Not that you're going to write closures, but you have the ability to write closures for very simple things. And now this is going to complain because a closure doesn't implement the handler trait. We're like, now do we have to write our own little things for every one of, do we have to write something to wrap that? You don't. And here's where the magic happens. Hang on to your seats because this is going to knock your socks off. Just going to start typing this. I'm going to perhaps narrate as we go. I'm going to implement for generic types. Oh, so it already knows what I'm going to do. It only knows this because I just did this before, so it already saw what I'm going to do. So let's just code complete this, hit save, and all of our problems went away. Now I can run cargo test, and everything works. So what is this magic here? So this is when in the Rust for Rustaceans book they talk about blanket traits. Well, many other places they talk about blanket traits. This is a blanket trait sort of thing. We are implementing for anything, for any type F, or for a type F, for a generic thing of F, we're going to implement the handler trait for that. And we're going to implement it for things that look like this, that implement the FN request sort of thing, for which traits or closures and functions do. And I would actually probably do self.call just to be, doesn't that work? Arguments are incorrect. Okay, never mind. We'll do it this way. But basically we're saying, okay, in order to call handle or to handle a request, we're going to call ourself, which feels really weird. And to get to this level of magic, it took me a long time because I wrote a project that needed to do this sort of thing. And to get to the point where you can write this just on your own takes a long freaking time to do. This is just that you're not, like I said, you're not going to do this magic just right out of the gate. And I think we can actually take off these trait bounds. I don't think we need to bind that. I think that will just work. Yeah. So that's the better way to do it. So stare at this for a while. This is, like I said, some pretty black magic stuff going on here to make that happen. But that is what makes this work. Because when Rust is looking at this, register handler says, okay, we need a handler that'll implement the handler trait. So then it looks at this and it says, okay, does this implement the handler trait? And it goes through all sorts of ways that, this is, whatever it is. And what happens is it says, okay, for closures, this closure implements an FN that takes in a request and returns a response, or anyhow result of response. And it says, okay, is there something there that will implement the handler trait for that? And that's where this gets matched. Pretty cool stuff. And now, if we have handlers do something different, if we want to change that the handlers are now going to take in a request along with like maybe some sort of context or whatever, we could change it here. And while we do have to change every implementation of handler trait, things that manipulate a thing that can handle stuff, those don't have to change. So, it's not entirely free. This doesn't just absolve you of any sort of maintenance. But this is the way to do it. To sort of continue this narrative context. Before we just had FN. And quite often you will find that you're like, I need some anything that has just one method that it needs to implement could be just an FN. FN is just kind of your catch-all of something. And so quite often we'll have something that's going to take and log an error. We're like, oh, I could just have that be an FN. And that's great. But sometimes you want to be more explicit to say, this is really handling this specific thing that we are here. That like it is a trait of handling a HTTP thing. And probably that's kind of the better thing to do is to say, like maybe call this a HTTP handler. Let's just. I'm trying to rename this better, and probably I should just end the video and call this good. But like this is almost not useful to us anymore. So I'm going to rename this to boxed handler. And I'm letting the refactoring happen. And now I'm going to rename, go back, I'm going to rename this to handler. Now this makes, more sense. I hate having like handler type or handler value. It's just a handler. So to call it a handler trait as the name of what it is doesn't make sense. So this is a handler. This is a boxed handler, which is actually a type. It's a real type. So then our server is holding boxed handlers, right? Yeah. The handlers here is a handler map, and these are all boxed handlers, and that makes much more sense for what it is. And a box handler is a dynamic handler. All of our words now make sense with respect to their nouns, adjectives, verbs, and everything. Okay, let's end this. If you thought this two socket adders was magic, this is that dark magic stuff in Harry Potter. Okay. Man, it's getting late. It's 5:42. It's time for dinner. I need to just hit the stop button now. So, see ya.